Thank you so much, Felix and Gordon, for being here for the presentation. And so this is the second webinar of GetOut events. And so I think there is no need in repeating the original presentation in a great detail. But at the same time, some of the students, and I see we have more coming now, may not know much about the company. So we have the early track in progress and about a little bit more than a week away from the final submission deadline. So they have this week and next week. But then the late track started this week. And so I assume most of the students joining us today will be actually from the early track trying to meet the company. So maybe Felix, if it's not too much to ask, if you can give a quick summary, a little overview of what your company does. So a little bit about you and the company and the product and the service for those who have not had a chance to watch the recording of the first original webinar.
Sure. Okay. So as you've mentioned, Vas, again, thanks for having me come on the webinar again a second time. This is really getting quite fun. Happy to come on again if you do need me to. Yeah, but a very brief background myself. I have my background was actually in finance and investing. I used to work for a couple of investment banks in Singapore, and then I worked for a few hedge funds in Singapore. I then moved on to Dubai. I lived there for about 4 years, providing consulting services to financial institutions in the International Financial Center in Dubai. Sort of decided to have a career change, to move back to Singapore. Came back in 2011, 2012. Got started into the corporate events business just simply because by chance, really. Yeah, so from then, I initially first offered team building services to corporates in Singapore. We then expanded the services to family days and dinner and dance or gala dinners. So since then until now, for the last 8 years, we've run over 2,000 corporate events. We continue to do it today, of course. So that's a very quick summary.
And that makes perfect sense. So when you say 2,000, did you personally participate in all of them, or now it's sort of regionalized and you don't have to be there each time? I'm just curious for myself, because that's a large number. Like if you do one a day, that will take you like 6 years.
Yeah. So I'm a very process systems and process driven individual and entrepreneur. I cannot work if there are no processes in place. I just get so irritated, and I'm very pedantic about making sure that things are sort of written down and drawn out and what have you. So I did participate in all 2,000 of them, not physically though. So I participated mostly by way of planning, by way of managing, by way of ensuring that the team sort of knows what they're doing. A lot of the larger events that at least, let's say 500 people and above, I would go personally if there was no conflict. But even if there were overlaps, I would still drop by every single event, especially if they were, of course, a larger event. Mostly just out of curiosity than necessity. So I personally like to attend the events that our company organizes. It's just nice. It's just fun. So I do go, and a lot of the family day events that we organize, especially in 2019, I bring my kids. So I have I've got 2 sons. Actually, now I have a daughter now who is 12 days old.
12 days old. So, oh, congratulations! Oh, that's a change from the last webinar.
Yes, that's a change from the first webinar. Yeah, so I've got 2 sons. They're 5 and 4. They love the family day events that we organize. So my wife and I, we bring them to every single family day that we organize for our family. So it's great. Our client pays and our kids get to enjoy. So I do attend most of the events that we organize.
Yeah. One interesting observation is also looking at the data. If you can see my screen here. So I just did the latest calculations based on the survey that was done 2 days ago, due 2 days ago. These are the frequencies of the companies in the early track. And so GetOut Events is actually the most popular company in the early track.
All right.
We have a couple more, we have a couple more companies in the late track, so there will be more to choose from. But in the early track, we had a total of 9 companies. And so 23% of the companies chose, of the teams chose your company. In fact, quite a big difference even with number two, and then much more than some of them companies. So to me, that means that probably at the very least, the students believe in your product and think that it has a lot of potential. Because again, it's not an easy product. It's not something that students sort of organized, or maybe even not even something they participated in. So if for example, if you were, I don't know, making clothing or food, I would understand that that's because it's a familiar product. In this case, I take that actually more as a kind of positive market response. So that seems to be, quite an impressive number. We have a bunch of questions from the early tracks students, and so yes.
Make one comment. With just so the students are aware, with so much interest in GetOut, VAS is going to have a lot of reports to read, each one being 25 pages. I think the students want to keep that in mind, because they got to make their reports impactful so it actually stands out. Yeah, you want to make sure your reports come out with something interesting,
exactly,
impactful, sets your report apart.
Exactly. And I see we have a few students watching live here, so if you would like to ask any questions at any time, feel free to either put them in the Q&A window, questions and answers, or there is a button at the bottom of your screen that looks like raised hand, and you can press that button. This way we will see you and we will add you to the conversation here. And we will literally just talk to you. You will be one of the people in the virtual room here. And so this way you will be able to engage in the conversation with Felix or Gordon or me if you have questions for us. But meanwhile, let me get to the questions that we got by email. As I said, several students either asked them earlier and said they could not attend, or just asked to ask them during the webinar. So as the students were reaching or searching for ways to increase your revenue, some apparently thought about playing with different products and different price levels. And so one question that comes up again and again, as was stated by one of the students, is, are you willing to reduce your prices to serve low-income communities? And I sort of know what the answers might be, but could you talk more about the price and your price strategy, and particularly your interest and willingness in potentially reducing prices to serve low-income communities or clients?
Sure. Yeah, this is a very common question that I get all the time whenever I explore expanding the business into a different country or a different city. The short answer is yes, of course. So very basic business 101. If we decrease prices, if we ensure that we still have a very healthy profit margin or gross profit margin, then the thing is we then need to obviously run more events and expand the volume in order to make the same amount of dollar money into our bank account back here in Singapore, right? We've done a very, very arm's length research across different countries, across different cities. Mainly, many of the cities that we've explored ourselves are lower income countries and cities. It is for sure possible for us to decrease our selling price. For example, in Singapore, if we were to offer a team building program at, let's say, 100 Singapore dollars, so what's that, $80 US per head for 100 people. Let's say 100 people or group, and we sell it for $100 per head in Singapore. We would probably have to sell it at, I don't know, $50 or $25 per head if we were to start this business in Vietnam or Cambodia or Myanmar, for obvious reasons. But at the same time, if we were paying, let's say, $15 per hour for a part-timer to work at our event, or we're paying, I don't know, let's say $500 for a facilitator to run the event, we would pay a fraction of that in those cities as well. Yeah, so I'm not too concerned. I am very briefly concerned about having to obviously charge less, because that means we have more operational issues, we have more operational concerns to think about. But profit margin wise, I'm very confident that our business model allows us to really charge whatever we need to charge in order to be competitive in a new city, in a new country, because our corresponding costs will for sure decrease. For example, if on the other hand, if we were to expand to a city like Dubai or Abu Dhabi, if we were to charge $100 per head in Singapore, we would be charging easily $200 per head in Dubai. But the interesting thing about a city like Dubai is a lot of the part-timers, as you would probably know, and a lot of the students would know, is that whilst the population in Dubai is, let's say, 3 million people, there's really only 100,000 Emirati, 100,000 locals. Yeah, so most of the people in the UAE are actually expats.
Yeah.
And many of these expats are from lower income countries,
Yeah.
for example, the Philippines. And Philippines, it's very team building, family day events, super popular in the Philippines. So if we, for example, expanded to Dubai, we could charge twice as much, and we could pay exactly the same, if not less, in terms of our fees, in terms of the part-timer fees, in terms of our facilitator fees, because we would be engaging professionals and experienced people who are from lower income cities who are used to you know, they're okay. They'll say like, yeah, pay me 15 an hour, 20 an hour, very good. We run the event, we'll make it amazingly fun for you. Even though as a company we could charge twice as much as we do in Singapore. But if we move to, and if we started in, let's say we moved to Moscow and say, or St. Petersburg, we would probably have to charge slightly less than Singapore. Not significantly less, slightly less, but we could potentially pay significantly less in terms of our part-timers fees, in terms of our supplier fees, simply because the economy there is, it's not as great as it is in Singapore. It's not as pricey, it's not as premium as it is in Singapore. But companies there who invest in such corporate events that we offer would be willing and able to pay a reasonable price for it. So there's a nice margin. I think in certain cities, for sure we would have to lower our price and charge less. But I think what would be smart for the students to do is to find cities where we, you know, the easy thing is to find a city where we charge less and pay less. We maintain a profit margin, and then we run more volume. We do more volume business. That's the easy part, I think. I think what's more interesting to me is to find a city where we can charge the same, if not more, but have to pay less because the economy itself isn't so prime, isn't so premium. That would be a more interesting city, and certainly will make a more interesting report.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Exactly. Cost of living, income level, but also availability of relatively inexpensive labor. Can I ask you a related question? So how difficult would it be for you to prepare a new first-time employee to assist you in one of those events? Is the learning curve very steep? I mean, let's say there are people available willing to work for a low wage. Would most of them be sort of trainable, and as long as they apply, you can teach them what needs to be done? Or it's something that does require a certain level of qualification and does take some training to be able to do the job?
No, Bas, I mean, the beauty about this event or the corporate events business is you really don't need to have any technical knowledge. Or for sure, you don't need an MBA to start or run corporate events business. What we've done is I have designed our business to be very modular. That includes the job roles. So for example, if we were to run a team building event, then the job roles that we would break down into modules are the main facilitator, the main guy who's going to be there to say, welcome everybody from X Culture, Felix from GetOut Events, you know, that main facilitator. Typically, this guy has a little bit of hosting experience. He's run some events before, so there's really little to no training that we need to give to this individual, apart from program-specific training. So we would say, for example, okay, Vas, you've got experience as a host. You obviously know how to control a crowd. You know how to make it more interesting and fun. But here's the program that we're running today. It's called the Boiler Room. These are the rules. This is what we need to give to the participants, and this is how we take score. And being a professional, or at least a semi-professional, you would be extremely clear after I give you a 15-minute briefing. So the main facilitator, sorted. And then we've got co-facilitators, who are typically people who are students or part-timers who have little to no experience in managing or running team building events. We would then depend on the main facilitator to say, okay, Gordon, I need you to just take this piece of paper, hand it around, just collect it back for me, do this for me, things like that, right? Very little training. Again, we do go through 10, 15-minute briefing before the event. Sometimes if they are available, we would do a physical meeting here in Singapore, or we would just get onto a WhatsApp video call prior to the event day, just to tell them, okay, so we're going to be running an event for this company called X Culture. There's going to be 300 people. It's going to be a scavenger hunt or an amazing race based in Singapore. This is what's going to happen. And your role is registration. And your role is to take score. Your role is to manage this specific station. So it's very role-based. It's very modular. And every single role has got a very short brief that we've already written up and we've repeated hundreds of times. So it's very easy. Even for a larger event like a family day in the video, playing behind me. That's that's a family day video for Accenture, the consulting company. This was for 3,000 people, and we hired about 55, 60 part-timers. Many of them have not run or worked for a family day event before, but this event was perfect. It was amazing. It was very, very smooth, because we put, let's say, 8 people or 10 people to manage carnival games. You've got one job: manage the carnival stall. Yeah, and then these other guys have got one job: just serve popcorn and candy floss. Another guy's got another job, or a few girls have got some jobs, which is one job, which is to manage the registration. Here is the Excel sheet, here is the Google sheet, this is the laptop. When someone comes, just check for their name and give them a wristband. That's it. Yeah. Then the overall management will be managed by a project manager who is a full-time staff. Yeah. So the project manager obviously needs to be experienced. So if somebody from the X-Culture group wants to, say, start a GetOut event in the city, we've touched on this a few times before. There are 2 main roles that we need full-time. One is an actual operations person, or a junior project manager person. And second would be a sales or a client account individual. With these 2 individuals, and obviously with our training, you can quite simply recreate the GetOut events business in any city. So that's the experience that you actually need.
So when you say,
can I
yeah, go ahead.
I explore this business model a bit more. And I've organized events in my prior job with event companies. They're a dime a dozen. You go to each market, they see all different types of team building, event management. What makes your model so much different than anyone else? Number one, why do we not see anyone else like the McDonald's of event management? There's no big corporation that does this. And how do you protect your IP if it is so special? Because if you're going internationally, you don't want it just to be immediately copied.
Yeah. So I think what makes us different, really in my opinion, it depends on the place or the city that we're moving into. If we're going to a less developed city or less developed country, I think just being from Singapore, being very efficient, being very pedantic about systems and processes, I think this is important, because this ensures that our clients get the same treatment regardless of their event size, regardless of the size of the entire event, regardless of the deal size. We've also come up with a lot of the new programs all the time. And just later on in this webinar, I'll be sharing with you this new website that we have launched. But we constantly create new programs, new games, new activities, nonstop. And I've realized that a lot of our industry competitors, if I may, tend to remain very stagnant, because the events business or the corporate events business is not too, it's really not too complicated. Again, making a burger is not complicated either. But why does McDonald's keep coming up with new menus? Why do they keep coming up with new items on their menus? I think because this innovation is very important and it's inherent in our business model. We have a process that forces the team to keep coming up with new things. A lot of these new activities and new things that we offer is also not done in-house. We are very open to partnerships. We identify newcomers and new entrants that are coming into the industry. We then work with them and integrate them into our overall program, repackage them, create something that's very attractive, very economical for our end client, and then offer that to our clients. So in general, it's also a very different business model, because many of the other event companies that are sort of offering a similar service in Singapore tend to do everything in-house, and when you do everything in-house, again, it's very hard to scale. So I would say that the customer experience, the innovation, the new ideas, the new activities, our systems and processes, which allows us to deliver on our promises to our clients. I think these 3 things make a very big difference in differentiating ourselves with our competitors. The second question about the McDonald's question, could you maybe just repeat that, Gordon, please?
Well, so basically, why is there no other large events management company? What makes it so difficult? There are a dime a dozen everywhere. And then the third thing is going to be how you protect your intellectual property of how you do
right.
this.
Okay. Yeah. The second question of why isn't there a global conglomerate of events? There actually are. There actually is. I think they're just running different type of events. So if you go to alliedmarketresearch.com, they do a lot of market research. They release a lot of free reports. I just came across a report recently about the events business. And what they say is by 2026, the global events business is probably going to be valued over $2 billion, $2 billion US dollars per year in less than 5 years. That's all right. But out of the $2 billion, over $1 billion, or more than half of that projected market is actually in corporate events. But the interesting thing is you tend to hear a lot of events when they are very loud, when they are marketed very well. Well, just look at the very unfortunate situation of the COVID-19 pandemic right now, or the epidemic that's happening right now.
We actually have a lot of questions about that too, so we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'll just touch very briefly on that. The events that are being cancelled, mostly, if not all, are conferences, festivals, carnivals, music, a lot of public events, a lot of very big events that are very well marketed. They're online. Everyone's talking about them. They're on TV, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube, they're all over the place. But these are the events that's being cancelled. So you hear a lot about these events. Yeah, corporate events, we are a little bit more quiet. Simply because by nature of the type of events that we run, they are very private. They are company sponsored. If we run an event for Accenture, we don't promote it on Facebook to tell the whole world that we are running an event for Accenture. So these events that we do are less public. I think that there are some organizations that are trying to expand their corporate events business globally and making it, sort of like into a franchise or licensing type of model globally. But the difficulty is, I think, is really putting systems and processes together, making sure that it can be scaled consistently and properly globally. I think the reason why we don't see a lot of these, or if any of these corporate event companies do that, is because many of the entrepreneurs or many of the proprietaries just can't be bothered, in my opinion. It's really not easy. And then to run this locally, whether you're in Singapore or you're in Orlando or you're in Hong Kong before all these things, before the virus, so that's before virus and after virus, right? So before virus, if you're in either of these cities, you'll be making a very, very, very comfortable living, more than comfortable. You don't have to be thinking about expansion. You don't have to be thinking about franchising, licensing, about different cities or different time zones, getting onto a webinar at 8 a.m. in the morning, getting into the office at 7 a.m. in the morning. It's just, you just don't have to do that. I think the business that we're in is very simple, and it's so simple that sometimes it makes you lazy, and you just don't bother. I think that's what I think. I don't think it's that difficult to expand it globally. So the third question about protecting the intellectual property, I think the best protection is innovation. I think trying to keep things secret, trying to keep things quiet, trying to sort of structural legal wrappers around intellectual properties and things, it works. I think it works in the short run, in the short run. But I think if we were really serious in expanding our business and dominating this industry globally, I think any legal protection, you can't apply for a patent on on a team building program. You cannot apply for a patent on how a family day event is run. You just can't. Yeah, and if you can't, then that does not become a competitive advantage. But so in my opinion, I think the true competitive advantage is not intellectual property protection. It's actually intellectual property innovation. I think if we continue to force our team and myself to continue to innovate, to keep finding new programs, to keep thinking of new ideas, by the time a competitor copies what we have, we've launched the next iPhone, we've launched the next version, we've launched new programs. I'm happy if Steve Jobs used to say, right? Copying is the best form of flattery in a sense, right or wrong. But I agree, if people actually bother to copy the programs and copy the activities that GetOut Events is offering, please do so. That is why on our website, you will notice that we have also taken a very different approach. we share a lot of our past events. We share the full videos. We share all our programs, all our activities. I will share another website with the webinar crowd in another 5 minutes or so, where we list over 130 team building programs fully, completely transparent. Our prices are also online. I think I briefly touched upon this in our previous webinar. I said we were going to launch something like this. We've launched it 3 days or 4 days ago, and I will show it in this webinar as well. So value for people who's come onto the webinar this time around. But yeah, to answer the third question, Gordon, I think that again, intellectual property protection is not the right way to go for our business. I think innovation is the right way to go. And the moment we decide that we're too lazy or we're too tired to innovate, then we might as well just stop and sell the business or just exit the business. You know, there is just no point in being in the business that we are in if we don't want to keep coming up with new ideas and new activities.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So when you said find cities where corporate demand is high and they can pay, but labor availability is, a lot of labor is available at a low cost, it doesn't really mean highly qualified labor. The people on the stage, the managers will be your trained employees, but everybody else, which is the vast majority of the people needed to run the event, as long as they have certain level of diligence and responsibility, they don't really need to have any prior special training. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. The main project manager still needs to have, of course, very specialized, very in-house training, but you could, it could be run remotely. For example, if someone said to me, Felix, next week I have a team building program. One of the ex-culture students says they have, let's say they tell me that they've got a potential client who wants to run a team building event in Nigeria next Friday, for example, and she wants to be the main facilitator. She wants to learn how to do it. I could easily coach this student over Zoom. Yeah. Because we have all the templates readily available. I would then be able to train her and teach her how to search for the part-time crew who does not have any experience, and how for her to train those part-time people, and she could literally run the event by herself next week.
Okay, next question, and you did answer it before in an email, but several other students asked, are you willing to expand into new types of services such as wedding or birthday parties?
Oh yeah, I've seen that question a lot. The answer is no. The short answer is no, not for now. I think
why? It makes total sense to me, but just so students know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would want to be. I want to do. Well, we want to do so many things in our lives, and I think this is more philosophical than economical. I think really it's you just cannot do everything, and I'm going to be hitting 40 soon. I know yourself and Gordon is still going to call me. You guys are still going to call me a young boy, a young kid. But I am. I do feel a little bit older than I was 8 years ago. With 3 kids now, I started to sort of understand a little bit more about how do you be really successful in business. I would much rather dominate an industry than compete in 5 different industries. So my intention is to dominate the corporate events industry. Do we have the skill sets to run a wedding or to plan a birthday? Of course we do. I mean, if we could run a 6,000 pax family day or 6,000 pax corporate event, for sure we could do a 60 pax wedding solemnization or a 100 pax birthday party. Is that the direction that we want to head towards? No. Why? Because my resources are limited. My own resources are limited. My brain power is limited. I want to continue to focus my thoughts and my plans and our growth towards the corporate events industry. I do not want to continue to have to compete constantly in the corporate events industry, and everything that we're doing today for the next 5 years is to help us dominate at least a nice chunk of the corporate events industry, not simply to be a serious competitor. I am serious about wanting to dominate this corporate events industry, and there is no way that you cannot walk towards the path of domination by being distracted to run birthday parties and weddings. So that's the answer. The answer is no. We're not going to be doing that, not in the foreseeable future.
Yes, makes perfect sense. Now, a few students asked about the market. And so some of them were asking, Is it okay to suggest multiple markets, not just one, but maybe two or three? Others ask, does the market have to be defined as a country, or can it be either a region within a country or a city within a country? Or could it be more regional, like, for example, the European Union or something like that, or maybe like a bigger multi-country region? What is your take on that? What would be the most useful presentation or useful information for you when they look at a city, at a country, at a region within a country, at number of countries, or some other way? Or it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, it does matter. It depends on the purpose of the report that they are creating. If they are simply going through the motion of completing a task that's given to them by X culture, then I would say be as broad as possible, cover as many countries, many cities, many countries, many continents as possible, of course. If they want the report to be useful and executable, then I would say be as focused as possible, be as niche as possible. Yeah, so for example, don't say the Middle East. Don't even say the UAE. Say Dubai and Abu Dhabi, or say Dubai, as opposed to saying that we can do this in the entire Middle East. For a lot of reasons. I mean, culture is different, language is different, especially in the European countries. Pricing is different, cost, there's so many things that's different. Even in the United States itself, if you move from the east to the central to the west, that's so many things are already different. So if you wanted to make a very broad report and you wanted to cover as many opportunities as possible in one report, certainly say the United States. But if you wanted something that can be executed and you were serious about potentially being part of this business as well, then say Florida, for example. But don't say Florida. I mean, that's just an example.
Yeah, and it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, the differences within a country may not even be so much from a region of a country to a region of a country, but for example, city versus rural areas. Like again, looking at Florida, I can imagine that you would have a lot of demand for your services in Miami, maybe Orlando, but probably once you get to smaller towns, not necessarily the fact. And so there may be much differences between those specific, like a few kilometers to the side, and it's completely different. It's not that it's a different, national culture. It's a very different corporate environment. So would that be correct? Again, I'm not sure about Singapore being, a city-state. Essentially, that's the country. But especially in the United States or Canada, for that matter, Gordon, right? Like if you're, let's say, in Toronto, once you go, outside Toronto to, like suburbs or maybe some smaller cities in the, middle of Canada, I don't think there will be much demand for those products, even though culturally it may be similar. Wouldn't that be the case?
Is that a question for Gordon or for myself?
Well, asking Gordon about Canada, but also you about your general experience.
All I'm going to say, and you're totally right, Vas. I'd say for the students, don't treat this as an academic exercise. Treat it as if it's your own business.
Exactly.
And be able to act on what you write in your report. Because you want to, next month you want to execute.
Exactly.
And so you have to get in the details.
This particular question also kind of touched me, since I've been between Canada and the United States for the last almost 20 years, basically, like half and half approximately. People often ask me, what is the difference between Canada or the United States, or which one do you like more? And to me, I mean, you really have to be talking about specific locations within the countries rather than about countries in general, because first there is a huge difference between, let's say, a major city, let's say Toronto, versus small town somewhere, in Ontario. Like it's a huge difference, even though it's in the same province. Whereas if you look at, for example, Toronto versus, I don't know, maybe New York, I mean, yes, there will be some differences, but, to a large extent, it will not be that hugely different. Or if you look at, for example, Western Canada, like Vancouver or Calgary versus Montreal, for example, same country, but the difference will be much, much bigger than when you look at Vancouver versus Seattle, for example, even though those are two different countries. So I kind of imagine that would be the same thing here to some extent, but especially given that you focus on the corporate market. Another question that comes up all the time, and I'm not sure if it's even relevant, so let us know, but apparently you still organize different types of corporate events. You mentioned team building, you mentioned family days. Here in the question, students mentioned like dinner and dances, and I assume they meant probably more like receptions and things like that. So are any of these types more profitable or more interesting to you, or as long as it's business, you treat them all the same? Do you focus in that respect?
Yeah. So the question is, do I have a preference for, well, which one out of the, if I had to pick one out of the three, which one would I pick?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the way they actually
I would,
here, so which
yeah.
ones are the most impactful ones? I'm not sure what that means in this particular question, but yes, probably which ones have the greatest
Yeah.
impact for your business?
I think in terms of bottom line, it is, I think, so I would not answer this question from the angle of the business bottom line, because all three types of events make us money. So I'm indifferent if it's just about money. If it's about impact, I would personally choose family days, um, because team building isn't usually organized for the staff of an employee. So it's very internal. It's about staff, meeting new staff, interacting with old staff, building camaraderie and all that stuff, all that things, right? It's a very internal thing. Corporate dinner and dance or the gala dinner is very celebratory, which is good. But it's usually held in a very nice restaurant. It's a very high end, typically event, and again, it tends to only involve the employees of the company. Family days, on the other hand, involves not only the employees of the company, but they also involve their families. Now, being a father of three now, I strongly believe that being able to involve your family in your work would motivate you to continue doing your work well. It would, so for example, if let's say you were constantly in school and you're working on not only your academic requirements, you're working on ex-culture, you're working on classes and all that, and you're constantly working nonstop. Then you don't go back home for dinner, you don't meet your family or your friends, and people just say, look, Vas is always busy. That's all they say. Yeah. But if once a year the university organizes a family day for all faculty members, all staff, their non-faculty as well, to come together and to invite their families and their close friends to enjoy an entire carnival, entire festival together, they then get to meet the main people of the university. They then get to meet your bosses, for the lack of a better word. Your bosses get to interact with them. They go on stage. They say, thank you very much for the family members of our staff, of our faculty for making this possible. We really appreciate you for constantly giving your support to our staff in order to make this entire university one of the best in the things like that. I think these things matter. I think sometimes employers tend to forget that in order for their employees to give their all, they need some kind of support back home as well. Whether you're married, whether you have kids or not, but many of us still do have a home that we go home to. And if the organization involves what we have personally, our personal lives together with the organization, it could create some sort of a very different and a very unique type of bond. When this bond is created, now your family understands why you need to stay late in the university. The family understands why you still need to come back for a webinar after your gym session, for example, or before your gym session, before you have dinner. Organizing these family day events, I think, in my own personal opinion, is more meaningful to me. I think it creates a more meaningful impact because it goes beyond the company, and I think this is more interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gia Yan, I see you did ask a question, so I added you to the panel here. If you have a microphone, feel free to unmute it. And do you want to ask a question, or should I? Can you hear us? I'm not sure if Gia has a microphone, but anyway, the student is asking, may I ask you the latest innovation that your company did? You did mention something about innovation, so is it a specific game, or I assume anything else?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to share my screen just to share some new things with the people on the webinar. Vas, can you look at, can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay, good. So we've launched this new website called funsupermart.net. So one of the way we are planning to innovate is to create more, I shared earlier, to be more innovative, to create more programs and more activities. So Fun Supermart is primarily for team building programs. Before team building program, whenever we present a team building program, we need to still create proposals. We need to send PDF files back and forth, and then the client will come back and say, or the prospect will come back and say, do you have any more programs? We've got to go back into our database and find more. It's a never-ending sales cycle. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to sell a team building program for 20 people. What we've done is we've now launched fundsupermart.net. We currently have listed 130 different activities on the platform. If you wanted to, for example, book a program called The Voice of Sharks, all you need to do is click into this program.
That's an open website, isn't it?
It is at fundsupermart.net. That's FUN supermart.net. All the students can simply go there and take a look at that. If they want, they can book a program with us as well.
So that's something you operate, or it's some third-party provider of those activities?
No, we have a vendor feature. So if somebody wants to launch their own team building business, but they don't really have the ability to market and promote their own programs, they can become a vendor with Fun Supermart. But right now, the 130 activities that we've listed on Fun Supermart is listed by GetOut Events, which is ourselves, of course. Client could just simply go on board, go on the site, pick a date, and select if they want to have additional teams, the prices then change accordingly. They can click on book. Then they would be asked to sort of register an account if they haven't already. They can pay us offline via bank transfer or check. They can also pay online using their credit card. This is entirely live right now.
I'm kind of curious for myself. So the games that are listed here, that's something that you developed and you just listed them on this Fun Supermart, or is Fun Supermart's activities that they developed, but you are licensed to use them? Who owns
them? So these games are developed by us, by GetOut Events. Fun Supermart is
use this platform to make the booking. Now the question then, again, talking about innovation, so you're not afraid to list all those activities here? I mean, I see you have pretty detailed descriptions there. So what are the chances that your competition will come and copy and use those activities, with their own clients?
100% they're going to do that, for sure. And it's great if they do that, because when they do that, then 3 blind spiders currently means nothing, but the more competitors copies the 3 blind spiders team building program, suddenly it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. 3 blind spiders then becomes the team building program that everybody in Singapore wants to run. And if you look at price as well, so we say now it's from $55 per head. Actually, it's a typo that it should be kept at $55 per head, because the more teams that you add, the cheaper the per head price becomes. It gets cheaper and cheaper. So you may ask me, Felix, you're listing your pricing up there. You're telling the whole world, at least in Singapore, that we're charging $55 per head. We're charging $2,200 for this program. What if our competitors see that? This is actually good, because currently nobody knows how much team building actually should cost in Singapore. And in the world, for that matter, even if you go to other team building websites in the world, you're going to not see their prices listed, because everyone's just so secretive. They just don't want their competitors to know. I would much prefer to let our competitors know, and I would much prefer to be the market maker to tell Singapore that team building programs should cost no more than $55 if you wanted this 3 Blind Spiders program. If you wanted a bar sing-off, it should cost you no more than $45 per head. I would much prefer to dominate by being the market maker, by setting the price, and telling our competitors that you really shouldn't be charging more than $45, because that's what I'm charging. And if you really want to compete, then charge the same or less. And if our competitors start coming to copy our description, it takes us a little bit more time, but we are adding more. So if I went into the admin platform, I'll be able to at least search the programs. So if I show this program called the Boiler
strategy, because you're absolutely right, Felix. I've been involved with at least the corporate training industry, not so much the events, but the training part. And it's always such a hassle to get the price, and then they're always protected. and it's almost impossible to get a quote. And they always ask a lot of questions about you, trying to find out how much you're making before they give you the price, not so much how much it will cost them. So it's kind of interesting to see that you have absolute transparency here. You not only describe your activities, but you show the prices. They're calculated automatically right here. Like going, for example, even consulting, like Gordon, when you were with Deloitte, how was your pricing set? I mean, I bet there was no website where a client can go and kind of get the quote automatically.
It was all optimized. So I think this is a relatively unique value proposition.
Yeah.
You're creating. I think, yeah, I think it's a unique value proposition in terms of where you're creating products out of events. You know, and you're creating it at a volume hard to copy.
Yeah, and removing
so this
friction, because again,
that we're sharing as well.
Sometimes it's such a big job for the client that often they just give up and say, oh, that's okay, you know, I don't want you. Or just get the first one because they don't want to deal with the issue of pricing. So I think this is a very interesting approach. I didn't realize that that's how you do it.
Yeah, so we share this event flow also. So we're taking a little bit more time to add because this is a lot more detail. So for example, for this program called the Paper Roller Coaster, we would say this is how, if you book the Paper Roller Coaster, this is exactly how we will run it. Obviously, we could make some changes according to your requirements, but overall, we would start with an introduction and icebreaker. It takes about 30 minutes. Then there will be an activity briefing by the main facilitator, which again is 30 minutes. The actual Paper Roller Coaster building phase is an hour and a half. Then the thrill, which is the competition, is 30 minutes. And then there's a debrief of 30 minutes. So if you look at this, you could, as the organizer, as the HR manager or director, for example, you could roughly gauge that this is about a 3-hour program. Yeah. So you don't have to keep asking me or my sales team, you know, can you tell me more about this program? And then we say, oh, it's about 3 to 4 hours. The next question you're going to ask me is, what are we going to do in that 3 hours? And then I have to keep repeating the same thing over and over again 1,000 times every single month because we get this number of inquiries. But if we put everything up, now as the organizer within the company, you can decide if this is the right program for you. Or you could come back and say, Felix, we don't have 3 hours for this program. We have 2 hours. Could you please remove the introduction and the debrief? And then I'll be like, yeah, fantastic, great. So now you know exactly what you want, and you also know exactly what you don't want. You know how much this is going to cost you. It's going to cost you, let's say, $60 per head. And with this program, again, a little bit of back here, but it's supposed to cost you $1,002 plus $250. $1,450 for this Paper Roller Coaster program. If as the organizer, you don't have $1,500, then you wouldn't inquire about this program, yes? So I don't want to be spending my sales team's resources and time to go through and to haggle about, you know, I don't have 1,500, can you do it at 1,000? Can you do it? I just don't want to do that. So I found that by listing our prices, by being fully transparent with how much we are actually charging, it also turns away a lot of clients that don't have $65 per person for a team building program. And that's good. If you don't have $65 per person, then please just don't call us. Because if you do call us, you're going to try and bring our prices down. You're going to say, can you do it at $35 or $40? And you know, we're going to be a bit desperate and we're going to say, yeah, maybe we'll do it. Maybe the event might get affected by way of quality, maybe it won't, but neither of us is going to be very happy. I mean, compromise is not the best solution in every situation. But if right now we list this at $65 before someone inquires, if they inquired about the Build a Bike program, we know they already have $65 per head. Yeah, so psychologically, it's very easy for our sales team to also manage this deal. We've also put up a live chat widget over here. So anyone, we've got all our salespeople and our ops people on the live chat platform as well. So whenever somebody chats, any one of us could just go online. There are a lot of canned responses that we have also created. So we literally can support anybody in the world if they have these questions. Now on this fundsupermart.net platform, I mentioned Dubai. If they go to fundsupermart.net/AE, we're testing out expanding the fundsupermart.net platform to a different city. So this is also live. We listed 3 activities specifically designed for Dubai. An amazing race at Dubai Marina, Running Man at Aquafun Water Park and Nerve Games on the water park as well. So if somebody clicked in, they would see this program that we have listed yesterday. Again, the duration is not 6 hours for Running Man, but still a little bit of typo errors here and there because we literally just launched this week. But the same concepts apply, full description, what's included, what is not included, what are the benefits. We have an FAQ. Everything is listed there. This is the buy. So if somebody said to me, Felix, can I launch in Nairobi? Can we launch this? Can we launch Fun Supermart in Nairobi next week? Absolutely, yes. We could launch it in Kenya. We could launch it in Nigeria. We could launch it in. So we're working on the next site that we're working on is Russia. So we're going to be launching in Russia within a few days. It's a little bit more difficult because Russia has different time zones. So right now we are only launching Fun Supermart in cities with one time zone, so it's easier when they make a booking. So this is one new thing that we've launched this week, and we have a lot of videos as well. So there is a Facebook channel for Fun Supermart. The way we're marketing this is we have a main marketing video here. So Fun lives here. We work with a professional host. His name is Wesley. So Wesley has given up hosting and he has joined the Fun Supermart team full time, which is very smart of him. So Wesley is now our ambassador on video. He presents in this video. He's presenting about the benefits of booking a team building program on Fun Supermart as opposed to going back and forth with a typical team building event organizer. We are also recording videos for every single one of our activities. So this is the Boiler Room Memory Challenge, and Let's Get Wet is for the program in Dubai. So all these things we are recording in our own office in Singapore. So we create a very makeshift studio. We're doing all these things internally online in Singapore. Whenever we launch a new program, we will just create the page, list it on the site, record a video, launch it on YouTube. So this is Fun Supermart. Again, one of the newest things that we've launched. We have also launched, or we are sending up to the App Store. And this, let me just see if I can share my phone screen with with Zoom. Okay, I might not be able to share. Let's see. QuickTime Player. Okay. Can you see my screen again?
Yes.
The event drops. Okay, good. Yeah. So we've also been working on launching an event jobs platform. So this platform allows part-timers to event part-timers anywhere around the world to download an app, and these are test events that event companies have listed. So this would be us again. So let's say there was a family day event. The part-timer can simply click into the Air Trunk Family Day. The event description will be put in when it is a real event. There's a start date and time. There's a duration. And then there are jobs available. So as you see at the bottom, it says already applied for the job. I'll show you a job that has not been applied. So they could look for jobs that are not tagged to events as well. So if they wanted, let's say a magician needed an assistant and they listed for a magician assistant on our event jobs platform, this event part-timer can simply click on apply, confirm the application. Then there's no more vacancy as you can see. But if there was still a vacancy, then it would say the application would have been sent through to the job poster, in this case, the event organizer. They then can look at the profile of the individual and try and offer a job to this applicant. And any contracts that's being offered will be listed on the contracts page. All the details, where do they meet, and there would be a WhatsApp link. If the group was available, they can use WhatsApp to communicate with their project manager and all that. So we are launching this event jobs app by sometime this week. We have already submitted this event jobs app to the Play Store on Google, and we have also submitted it to the iOS store. This is a very brief. I'm back on my browser now, I hope. So this is what the back end looks like. So an event organizer or any of the GetOut events companies in any parts of the world will have access to this database. They can launch a job on this database. I think I need to log in again. Yeah, so they can launch a job on this database by simply going online to post. When they post a job here, it will be reflected in the Event Jobs app. Anybody who signed up or downloaded that app will be able to get a prompt that there is a job that is available for them, an event job for them that is available. So the Event Jobs database / platform is the second thing that we've launched, that we are launching this week. We've also launched this new.
I think what you're illustrating overall, because you're going to run out of time, but you're organizing the way you have productized. You've packaged components of the events management business to be able to systemize it, make it more process oriented, to be able to propagate it. So I think you actually have quite a unique value proposition. Now, for those students that aren't from Singapore, you should recognize Singapore does have a core competency of process and system organization. Things run here well. And it has a brand, particularly within Asia, around that Singapore usually does it right. So that's at least in Asia is some brand value that can actually be propagated. One thing I'd like to ask you is, how many full-time employees do you have in your company?
We have 7 on the events side, and we have 4 developers on our payroll.
Yeah, because what you're showing and everything, I think some students may think you have 100 people or 200 people. You know, you're obviously producing with a few people.
I would kill myself if I had 100 staff. I promise you that.
Felix, here's another question from the same student. So since it's a B2B model, what are some of the calls to action that the firm, basically what do you do to retain your customers after the event? What do you do after sales services to make sure that they come back to you?
Yeah, so keep them involved. Keep sharing with them new information about ideas that we have that can help them with their employee engagement. So firms that engage us, they are concerned about employee engagement. They want to be engaged with their employees. You don't always do that by way of running events. You can they can also engage employees by by organizing, let's say, birthday parties and doing fruit days. So a lot of the ideas, right? So again, I'm banking on our innovation, our ideas. Which is why there is really no point in trying to sort of register an IP to protect ideas. I think in our line of business, generating more ideas and sharing these ideas, as many as possible for free, is the best business model. And we do that very, very often with our existing clients to continue to engage and to continue to keep them involved. So this is not a subscription model. There is no guarantee for business. There's no guarantee for repeat business. The only guarantee is what we can control by ourselves, which is, again, coming up with new ideas and sharing more information with our clients.
So the events that you organize now, what % of those would be by the repeat customers?
I think the number is actually increasing, is starting to increase. It used to be maybe about 10 to 15% a couple of years ago. And then maybe 2-3 years ago, it was probably about 20 to 25%. Last year to this year, the inquiries, obviously not running the events because of the existing situation, but at least the inquiries from our last year's clients have gone up to as high as 30 to 40% now for different types of events. Now that we've launched Fund Supermart, we are able to go back to them to say, now we have 130 different programs or team building activities. You really don't need to go to Google anymore. Eventually, we obviously have more corporate. We want to corporatize it as well, so we could potentially give the company a corporate login where any of their staff could simply just book any activities that they want, and then we could settle billing at the end. But that's the next milestone that we're trying to reach with Fund Supermart. But I believe by offering new programs, offering more things, coming up with new ideas, but not organizing weddings and birthday parties, but staying focused on our niche, which is corporate events and employee engagement through activities. These things would help us increase our customer retention.
Yeah, perfect. We are pretty much out of time, but a couple more remaining quick questions. One, do your clients choose the content of the event and the refreshments and food that you serve? And you showed us how it works with the content of the event. They can literally choose the activities. How about the food? Is it something that the clients often request to be involved in selection of, or they just tell you whatever you think?
Most of the time, they trust our advice. But we're very Singaporean, and we at GetOut events we're very efficient, but so are our clients. So even though they trust our advice, they would still tend to want to have choices. So they'll say, okay, so there's 6 different restaurants or 6 different menus that they can choose from. Felix, could you just pick 2 so at least he can share that with his HR director, and then as a community. So they would have, they'll put 20 people in a room just to pick a menu. That's just Singapore. But they do that, and we very happily try and filter it down as much as possible to help them with their decision making. That is really our job, right? As a consultant, we're not just an event organizer; we are literally event consultants. I'm sure Gordon can tell us all a thing or two about being a consultant or an actual one. So clients tend to want to choose, but we filter it down as much as possible.
That makes sense. And the final question, again, it can become a big topic, but just briefly, do you have a mission statement? And if so, what it is? And I know at least in the United States, everybody's obsessed with mission and vision statements. My department went not so long ago through the process of formulating the mission statement. We had like countless meetings. And I believe, after like spending months on developing the mission statement, by now nobody remembers what it is anyway. But I'm curious if you have one.
No, no, we do not have a mission vision statement. But what we've been trying to develop is not a vision mission statement. I watch a lot of Simon Sinek's videos on YouTube, and he's most famously known for Start With Why.
Why, yeah.
And so it's the why question. Why do we do what we do? I don't have an answer right now. Maybe one of the ex-culture students would have, but it's really trying to make it fun again. Whatever it is. It's easier to sell fun than to sell anything else, really. If we had to get to a stage where we had to make a cold call and go door knocking, what would be easier, to sell insurance or to sell something that's fun, assuming that the buyer has the ability to buy. I think it's easier. It's always easier to sell fun. So GetOut will always be about fun, even if we were to go into, let's say, something boring like training, for example. We want and we will make training fun. Again, it's always making it fun. Again,
so you're on a mission to make
too much
corporate life more fun. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, if that's even possible, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Fun is really what we're focused in. I believe if we focus on fun, it would be very, very easy for us to launch into a new city, to launch into a new country, a new market. If we try and make it so institutional, we forget about having fun and selling fun and producing fun, then it will not work. And then I think whichever student creates a report that doesn't have any fun element to it would be, I think, in my opinion, going off on a tangent.
All right, so we are over time. Sorry, we took a little longer of your time than originally promised. Did we miss anything, Gordon? Did we cover?
We have a good feel for Felix's company. I think it is an amazing effort in terms of addressing the industry in a new way. And so now we got to see if we and the students can help propagate it with the right choices.
Yeah, let's see what the students come up with. So the first batch of reports should be available. It's due next weekend, and it may be a couple of days for us before we clean everything, get it all ready in one folder, but then we'll share it with you, Felix. And importantly, it would be nice if you could take a quick look at them in case there is either something that you see and you want the next cohort to focus on, or if you see a lot of something that you don't need and you don't want the next cohort to spend time on it. So we will still be able to make those changes, because the next group will not really start working on it for another 2 weeks, because now they're still meeting each other, deciding on the client. So we may be able to make adjustments to, to make the second batch even better than the first. Okay,
Sure.
thank you so much. So have a nice day, gentlemen. I think for you, tomorrow has already begun. So So for me, it's still yesterday. So yeah, but thank you so much. All right.
Thanks for having me on
Yeah.
again, Vas. And